We often hear about awakening your greatness from different personal development gurus and life coaches. But what exactly does it mean, and how can we experience our greatness? Well, today we have an international expert on this topic who will share with us the 4 pillars to awaken your greatness.
Grow your wealth, live on your terms.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Conversations with Experts, the show that allows you to connect with experts in different areas of life. Our intention is to help you be your best self and create your best life. I'm Millen Livis, the host of the show and financial independence mentor. Are you a busy entrepreneur or a hardworking professional who wants to be financially independent so you have the true freedom of choice? You want it? Awesome. Glad you're here, because if you want your money experiences to be different, you've got to do something different with your money than you've done in the past. So go ahead and download my wealth planner for free. And here's the link to it. And start working your way through it right away. And if you want to access a powerful free training I'm going to offer next month, join my free Facebook group, Wealth Building for Powerful Women. And here's the link for this group. All right. Now let's move on to our topic today, which is 4 pillars to awaken your greatness. And my fabulous guest today is Jen Coken. Jen, welcome, and make sure you unmute yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be with you.
Yes, me too. I'm very excited because I really love this conversation about awakening your greatness. And I know that some people may feel skeptical about this, and some people may be curious about this. But to talk to you, because I know that you're an expert in this area of personal development, is really, really honor and pleasure. So thank you again for being today, talking to me today and sharing your wisdom. So Jen, before we start our discussion, because I have a few questions to ask you, I want to introduce you a little bit formally to our audience. So Jen Coken works with people in power position who don't feel so powerful anymore. She shatters their self-doubts so they can learn to love themselves and embrace their genius and own their success. She is recognized by ABC, MSNBC, and TEDx, and she is an international peak performance coach, Fortune 500 speaker, Imposter Syndrome expert, and a recovering stand-up comedian. So thank you so much for joining again. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. It's just my pleasure to be here.
Okay, so Jen, obviously my first question to you, well, maybe not so obvious, but I really, really want to hear this definition from you. What does it mean to awaken your greatness?
Well, I start with the premise that everybody's great. You know, I think for most people, we look at other people and see them as great, but we rarely see it in ourselves. And the truth is, each of us has a unique leadership style that when we are operating from there, when we're leading from our own authentic and true leadership style for ourselves, that means we're being great. Now, greatness is unique for each person, just like a leadership style is. So for some people, it could be your greatness is being courageous, being humble, and being a visionary leader. Let's say that those are the words that would describe you. Awakening your greatness involves 4 pillars, like you talked about, that includes learning how to lead from your heart. Because when we're in our head, we are judging ourselves, we're judging others, mostly we're judging ourselves, we're thinking about things too much. But when we're in our heart, we truly can find compassion, humility, and empathy for others. So leading from our heart, letting go of trying to get it right, trying to be perfect, listening for the gold, and finally having life be about other people, acknowledging others. That greatness that I say, and I'm sure you would agree with me, is in each and every one of us, is not something that people think about because we're not taught about that in school. We're not taught leadership in school. And so most of us, I would dare to say, have an upset teenager running our company and running our life.
So true. I love this definition, and I love how precise you define it, because it, for many people it could be like too generic, but after your definition, it really makes it very clear. And I'm curious, what was your greatness moment that compelled you to do this work?
Well, there was once upon a time when I was a horrible leader, when I was a bully to get things done. My background is in politics. I spent 25 years managing campaigns, getting people elected. You only have a short window. There's the days between now and election day, or we're working on an issue, or somebody has asked me to manage and design a campaign to lobby Congress. If you're not going to do what I need you to do, get out of my way. I'll do it myself. Right. So it was very much the enforcer, the bully, the person who, well, on one hand was very visionary and could be very inspiring. You didn't want to get on my bad side. And at the same time, I was also a micromanager. You can ask my my godson's fiance, my goddaughter now, I don't know what you would call her, but I used to be her boss. And I was a bit of a perfectionist and micromanager. And it was not until I began to practice these 4 pillars, particularly the part about letting go of trying to get it perfect. That was a big moment for me, of leading from my heart, and really, because that's who I wanted to be, as a loving, it's kind of like a great mom is loving but firm. Kids want boundaries. I think when we become leaders, we usually become leaders because we're doing great as an individual contributor. So we're promoted and we're promoted till we're leading a company, or maybe we've decided to go lead our own company and we're an entrepreneur, the kind of people that you work with and that I work with. But nobody along the way necessarily has demonstrated great leadership or has trained you. And if they have, I think often we look at those people and say, geez, I could never be like them. So it came from me recognizing my own Achilles heel and owning that, quite honestly, and recognizing where that came from, which was my bratty teenage self telling my mom to quit talking to me about her problems because I just wanted to be a kid. Everybody has that originating incident or moment that is actually driving our unconscious leadership. When we awaken our greatness, when we learn to lead from the heart, when we learn to let go of trying to get it right all the time and be perfect, when we listen for the gold in others, when we're listening for what's right instead of trying to figure out what's wrong and what we do or don't agree with. And when we acknowledge others for the way they're showing up instead of belittling them or judging them for not doing things our way, life is simpler, your heart's filled, and there's just this ease and flow as we go about our day.
So true. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's challenging for people who don't have this built in, like who are born with this like go-getters and perfectionism genes, and then without realizing, without being aware of what you just described, you can really screw up the best opportunities that life can present to you as a leader. And I know that you work with a lot of achievers. So could you share the challenges that you witness, maybe from your clients, maybe just, maybe not your clients, but in general, maybe your research shows, what are the challenges that you see most achievers facing?
Well, it's so interesting that you use that word, because the assessment I use with my client is Clifton Strengths. And the number one natural talent that people in the US have is achiever. which is getting things done. And we, you're from Europe, I'm from the US, but for anybody outside of the US, you take your vacation, you take a holiday, you take a siesta, you take time off. And I think Americans are so driven like that. There's one thing that you said in answer to your question, which is nobody's born an achiever. Nobody's born a perfectionist. Think about it. You don't come out of the womb wanting a tidy diaper or a tidy bib. You're just, liquids are coming out of your body everywhere, and you're just a happy baby and you want to be fed. And we learn to be the people pleaser. We learn to be perfectionists, and not because of any drama or trauma. It's usually very small, what I found is small, innocuous events. When I was 6, my grandmother taught me how to make my bed. And I will never forget that day, or the bed or the bedroom, because she said to me, you want to be mommy's good little girl and please mommy and make your bed every morning. And I did. And in that moment, okay, I need to please mommy. And I definitely need to please my dad, or I need to please mommy to make sure dad doesn't get angry. And all of us have had these family dynamics or things that have happened at school where we felt like we didn't belong, or we were bullied, or we didn't fit in, or family dynamics where we had to walk on eggshells because of other family members. Those small moments are the moments where we learn strategies to avoid unwanted emotions like embarrassment or guilt or shame. I have a client who, when she was 9, she got a C on a test. And when she brought it home to her dad, she'd been a straight A student. She brings it home to her dad, and her dad said, well, what's going on with the C? And she says, well, Dad, it's average, because the C is average. Give me 1,500 words on average. And right then, in that moment, embarrassed, shamed, because she didn't please dad. And every little girl, your world revolves around dad. Every little boy, your world revolves around mom, kind of thing. And so unconsciously, that created a pattern for her of wanting to get it right. Always have to go for the best, never want to experience embarrassment, because it all relates back to the way the brain works. So our brain, the amygdala, the reptilian part of the brain, is that fight, flight, or freeze. So we're constantly trying to figure out threat. And the brain doesn't know the difference between real or perceived threat. So when she comes home with that C and her father says what he says, the brain's like, oh, alert, alert. It's not a dinosaur that's going to eat me, but it feels the same way because it can't figure it out. And then she's sentenced for the rest of her life. And so as a leader, she was wondering why everybody wasn't living up to her expectations. And it wasn't very pleasant to work with her until we unlocked that brain pattern and we got to the root of it. And then she could create her unique leadership style, which is empathetic, caring, and curious. And that became her mantra. And she began to start every sentence with, I'm curious, or that's so curious, to train herself in this new style of leader where she felt at home. Because think about the constraint. You and I have probably had these moments too, where we're trying to get it perfect. It feels like a straitjacket. It's not fun.
I cannot tell you how much this story that you just shared about your client reminded me my own childhood, because I had very challenging relationship with my own father, who had very high expectations from me. And even though I was a student all the way through high school and middle school or whatever, I always felt that I was not good enough. So I developed these qualities that I need to be better than everybody else in order for my father to be happy with me or satisfied with me. Like I never felt that I was good enough for him. And many years later, I realized how it impacted my attitude, how it impacted my drive, and frankly, in many positive ways, but also not so positive ways, right? So I always was working harder than everybody else, and always was very driven, and always felt like, well, if I don't be the best possible me, then it's a failure. So it was such a close call for me to call myself a failure, that when it actually happened, I was going through some challenging time in my life. And the first thing that came to me the thought was, I am such a failure.
Mm.
I am such a failure. And it definitely was linked to the way I felt around my father. And it took me years and years of healing and releasing and all of this stuff. And partially that's what I do now with my clients, because I help them to release this hidden, deep-seated wounds from probably childhood, most of it from their childhood, to release this feeling that, I need to be that way to please that person. And sometimes for some women it's parents, for some women it's a partner, etc. So it's so important what you just shared and what you do. And I would like to ask you, if we have a little bit of time today, about 20 minutes or so, and maybe even less now. So I would like to, if it's okay with you, I would like to walk through the 4 pillars that you briefly mentioned before.
Yeah. So the first one is leading from your heart. And that means practicing. So I'm trying to think of how to say it. So leading from your heart, you can't get from your head to your heart. A lot of people want to think their way into leading from their heart. And I tell people, I do a 30-day challenge as well as an academy, but in the challenge, I say to them, you can't think your way into leading from your heart. You actually have to experience and feel it. So I tell people, take a few deep breaths. When you notice you know how sometimes your thoughts just go, 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 go. And sometimes we get into that negative cycle. Often it's before we go to sleep or something happens and that triggers that negative cycle. You want to take some deep breaths. Number one, just some deep breaths, because what you're doing is you're reducing stress and cortisol levels, and you're reducing the impact that amygdala going and thinking there's something wrong. So you take those deep breaths and you actually visualize yourself connecting with your heart, the shape of your heart, like Valentine's Day, right? And envision, I think I'm making up a new word, visualize the color pink or red or whatever that experience of a warm, loving color is emanating from your chest, and feel it in your chest where your heart is. So that's number one, but it requires you getting out of your head. And for some people, they may go, oh, it's so woo woo. Okay. Well, it is a little quote unquote woo woo. However, if you got in touch with your unconscious leadership type, or when you were talking about thinking of yourself as a failure, you also feel that in your body without realizing it. You might tense your thighs or clench your butt cheeks. Sorry, folks, for saying that, but you could, or it may feel like a punch in the stomach. When you take a minute to tap into your body, you can feel where the tension is. So another access is, okay, you're in your head, you're having all these thoughts. Where do you feel it? Probably tension behind your neck. Maybe you have a headache. Maybe your stomach hurts. All right, well, take those deep breaths and relax your body, and then connect to your heart. So that's number one. When we're connected to our heart, we're grounded in who we truly are. We're relaxed. We're actually embodying love. And as a leader, believe it or not, that's one of the most important qualities of a leader, is to come from assuming people are doing their best and come from a place of love and compassion for humans, right? And remember, everyone else is human too. That's important to remember. The second pillar of letting go of perfectionism, that's noticing every place where you're trying to get it right, trying to get it right, trying to get it right. It's got to be perfect. Why can't I get this all done? I should be able to get it all done. I got to, write this blog. It's every word's got to be right. I've got to do this thing. Everything's got to be right. Everyone else should be right too. Everyone else should get it perfect, perfect, perfect. We all are driven by these notions of being perfect, and being perfect is an ideal. And if you look at the dictionary definition, in the definition of itself, it says never to be obtained or never to be attained. So we want to let go of all those notions we have and take the case. This is what perfect looks like right now. Right now, this is what perfect looks like. This is what winning looks like. Then the third pillar, listening for the gold, is actually taken from a very famous story from Think and Grow Rich about this miner that discovered a vein of gold. And it was one of the first in the state of Colorado. And he got very wealthy off it until one day he hit a dead end. And try as he might, he couldn't find the vein anymore. He couldn't find the gold. So he sold his equipment to a junk dealer. And the junk dealer brought it to somebody who was an expert, a mining expert, who did some calculations and said, if you just go, 3 feet to the right, you're going to find the gold. And sure enough, he did. And that's been the longest running mine in the state of Colorado. I don't know if the actual story is true, but it's a great analogy to understand we're always 3 feet from gold. When we meet people, when we're in situations, if you listen for the gold in what they're saying, you're going to hear things you've never heard before. People are going to begin to relate to you in ways you never would have imagined, in the ways you've been wanting to be related to, rather than, which is what the human brain does, judging and evaluating, because our brains are trained for threat and we're always thinking negatively. So that's number 3. And then the 4th piece is acknowledgement as a created act in language. We generally, if I were to meet you in person, we're here on StreamYard, right? We're streaming. Oh, Millen, you're so gracious and beautiful. Okay, well, I can see that by looking at you, which is very different than creating who you are for me in the moment. You are somebody for me who cares so deeply about others. It comes through in your work, about your family, about wanting to make sure that women succeed financially so they have the means to achieve their dreams. And that's your biggest dream. And I so appreciate that about you. If I'm not coming from the heart, I'm in my head, that acknowledgement wouldn't have sounded the same. If I was trying to get it right and find the right words, that acknowledgement wouldn't be the same. If I wasn't listening for the gold, so each piece builds on the other. And those are the 4 pillars.
I love it, love it, love it. Absolutely love it. And I love all of these 4 pillars. And by the way, thank you very much for your acknowledgement and for your kind words. But it's just really so valuable and so precise. I know it's not a science, but the way you define it, it just really came home to me. All of these qualities that every leader should be aware of and be willing to develop. I don't like to use word try. I don't like, maybe we're all imperfect, but be willing to look at yourself in terms of your style, your leadership style, and how you affect other people around you, how you affect others by your energy, like being willing to look closer at this. And how often do you acknowledge people who work with you? And how often you really say something to others from your heart, not only from your mind, which, I think it's very important to harmonize your heart and your brain, because we still need our brain, but they need to work in harmony. And perfectionism, I think, so much said about harmful effects of people who are perfectionists, not only in their own life, effect that they experience in their own lives, but also in people around them. Because once you're perfectionist, you not only expect be perfect yourself, but you also expect people around you to be perfect. And that's where all this imposter syndrome is rooted in, all of this stuff. So everything that you describe is just so important for people to be aware of. And I think awareness about this and anything pretty much is the very important first step to your growth. Very, very important.
Yeah, I want to say one thing about what you said, which is I think these 4 pillars are like 4 practices that leaders can experiment with. You're right. There's no scientific data. I know it works for me. I know it works for my clients, but start practicing listening for the gold and see what happens. Start practicing letting go of being perfect. If they don't work, fine, throw them away, but I bet they will.
Okay. I have one more question because I was very eager to ask you this question. So I know that we hear a lot from different gurus, personal development gurus, that you have to play big. Like your goals are not, it's not only that you need to be worthy of your goals, but your goals needs to be worthy of you. So what is the biggest mistake that you see most powerful women that you work with making when it comes to playing big and awakening their greatness? Biggest mistakes.
They forget there's a messy middle. You know, that when we tap into awakening our greatness or creating a bigger goal, it's not going to happen overnight. Or if we want to shift how we're leading from that bratty way of leadership to being compassionate, it doesn't happen overnight. And in fact, life's going to life you. Life's going to show you circumstances where, guess what? You get to rise to the challenge and let go of perfectionism and be compassionate in that moment. That all the years you've been perfectionist, right? For however many years you've been alive, you've been, well, not all the years you've been alive, whenever that moment started. So let's say my client, age of 9 to 50, that's 41 years of brain patterns on being perfect. And she wanted things to flip on a dime overnight. I said, you're like, think about this. If babies had that same viewpoint, we would not have stairs, because everybody would be lying on the floor. Because the moment you took one step to try to walk and couldn't, you'd be like, okay, fine, I probably shouldn't have walked in the first place. Okay, no problem. I'm just going to sit here and someone will bring me things, and everything would be on conveyor belts, you know? So you have to understand there's a messy middle. It takes practice to ingrain these new brain patterns. It takes practice to practice compassion, to practice being loving or being curious. As far as I can tell, there's no end to practice compassion, empathy, love, any of those unique leadership styles that really elicit the best in others and have people naturally want to follow you. You can, if I had on my tombstone was loving, was fun, and was compassionate, I'd be happy. I don't need anything more, but those are 3 things I can practice for the rest of my life. So don't forget about the messy middle, because when you forget about the messy middle, that's when people give up. Don't give up.
3 feet before they discover the gold, right? It's so easy. We all go through challenging time, and it's so easy sometimes to say, I'm done. But it's so important to just have extra step. So Jen, I am really, really glad that we had this opportunity to speak today, because I knew that your wisdom will help many, many people, probably many women, because I know that that's who you work with, and that's who I work with as well. And I want to ask you, where can people who want to connect with you, how they can find you, where they can go to learn more about how they can awaken their greatness?
Well, there's 2 places. One is my website, jencoken.com. And on there, you can sign up for my email list. I send out a couple of emails a week teaching people different practices and tools and tips to be able to awaken their greatness and tap into their greatness. And then I think you're going to throw up the URL for an academy, 4-month academy that I have, where we will train and develop you how to awaken your greatness and put it into action around fulfilling whatever big dream, big goal that you have. And you're going to be in a group of people who are just as exquisite as you are, so you can hold each other to account and you don't feel alone.
Well, that was a really beautiful opportunity that you offer to our audience. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time to speak with me today. And I want to thank all of you who are watching and listening us today for taking your time out of your busy lives to listen and to learn how you can awaken greatness within yourself and in your life. So thank you again. And I will see you all next week, same time, same place. And have a beautiful day. Bye now.